Sam Shot here, founder of Wall Street Mastermind. Back today with another client interview for you guys. Actually, part two with our client Alex. Alex has actually previously been on here with us already and has graciously agreed to come on here again because, most of you probably haven't heard his first interview, I'm guessing. But for those of you who have, you'll recall that the last time we talked, Alex had just secured his full-time offer at a private equity firm, which he was very excited about. And then obviously, what is it? February 2021 right now. 2020 was a crazy year for everybody. COVID and the world kind of, just ground to a halt, and a lot of things that we thought we would never see happen, both in the real world and just on the recruiting front. And so, Alex, why don't you could probably tell the story better than I can, but why don't you maybe start by kind of like catching people up on just what you've been up to since then, or what exactly happened?
Yeah, absolutely. So, fast backwards to March of 2020, obviously COVID's really hitting the United States pretty hard. I'm on spring break with, my lacrosse team. We usually go down to Baltimore to play a tournament. And of course that gets canceled. The NCAA cancels spring sports. So, we're heading home and, I don't really know what's next. I know that, I'm obviously interviewing for positions and probably looking to start my full-time career. I think just, after the 4 years of lacrosse, even though the senior year got cut short, I think it was just time to move on and, start my professional career. So ended up going home, mid-March, and ended up interviewing at home over Zoom for that private equity firm. And like, if anybody that saw the first video knows, super excited about that. It was a tech-focused fund in California, and I was super excited about the opportunity. Really thought I connected well and fit in well with the culture there. And so since then, accepted the offer. I felt really lucky to even have an opportunity at that point, a full-time opportunity. So decided that this is probably the best route for me, and I think it's going to be great for my development in terms of what I want to do with my career. And then, May comes around and I come back out here to New York, where I'm currently stationed. And
we did that. Sorry, just to interrupt. We did that. And then we did that first interview in April. I just looked it up. We did it in mid-April. And that was when we were still, super excited for you and stuff. And you thought you were going to go to this PE job. And then, sorry, back to you. Then in May, you go back to New York.
Yeah, and I'm like basically getting ready to move all my stuff out at this point. I'm like, all right, I got to take some stuff home. I'm getting ready to move out to California. So, I'm going to take some stuff with me if I can, save some money in terms of, buying new furniture and stuff like that. And I get a call from what would have been my vice president. And he calls me and says, hey, I got some, terrible news. We're taking a really pessimistic view on COVID and whatnot, and we're going to have to rescind your offer. And at that point it was like, oh no, like not again. Like it was almost like I thought I was dead in the water at that point. But, I went home, or I called my parents immediately, and I was like, I got my full-time offer just got rescinded. And my parents thought I was lying. Like, they're like, no, you're kidding. Like, you're obviously lying. Like, you're messing with us. I said, no, I'm dead serious. And, went home after that and, kind of packed up some of my stuff and brought it home. And because I didn't really know what I was going to do at that point. Like, I didn't have a plan, obviously. And really took it upon myself to try and search for full-time opportunities wherever they may be. So immediately started networking with people just to see, what could be open during the summer and whatnot. And maybe I could, fill a role if anybody needs it. So, and not exactly in just investment banking as well, or private equity. It was, I was looking at transactional advisory, corporate development at some, corporations in Minnesota and, where I'm from. So wasn't exactly looking at just investment banking analyst roles. Right. So figured nothing was probably going to come up over the summer, and started really looking towards the future. So, I applied for grad school at RIT, where I did my undergrad, and I could do my master's in 2 semesters, just 5 classes each semester, and I could be done. And, that'll buy me some time. And, hopefully something will come around next year, and hopefully the job market by then is good enough to the point where I could get, an entry-level role, hopefully in banking or in private equity. So that whole summer, I really worked extremely hard networking. I think I wrote it down. I compiled everything in a spreadsheet in terms of the people I've talked to over the summer. And since last May, I have talked to 127 people, and that's still growing, obviously. So continuing to network just whenever I can, but looking to find people with similar backgrounds as me, or maybe people that have also played college lacrosse or college sports that I maybe have in common with them. And I even came across some people that I went to the same high school as me. They're a little bit older than me, but one of them's working in investment banking. I knew him really well. So crazy what the type of people that you meet just throughout the whole networking process. But
Yeah. So
essentially
from
started.
May, so from May, when you found out, you immediately started looking around. Just to kind of summarize for you, you just immediately started looking around, not just in banking, but also other professions that you think might be somewhat tangential to banking, like transaction advisory and corp dev and things like that. And then none of the, like, I guess it was probably too last minute though, right? Because it was already May, and you were looking for something to start in the summer, which at that point was all filled up. And then so you kind of pivoted over to the master's in finance degree, which actually I'm surprised. Like, so I guess just for my own education and for other people's education who are listening, like the master's in finance programs, I guess you can apply pretty last minute and still start on time, huh?
Right. Yeah. So that's kind of why I did it. I said, I'll apply. I'm going to get accepted. I know I'm going to get accepted, but I'm not going to accept it until like basically the very last day, just in case something comes up and, I'm not locked into tuition or anything like that. So I really waited till the last second to decide to go to grad school.
Which is like, what is that deadline? Like, do you have to just commit by like August or September?
Yeah,
Or?
I think the commitment might have been like mid-July, late July, and I waited to the very last second.
So you started applying right away in May, and then do you find out like within like a week or two, or like what's the turnaround? Like,
Yeah, the turnaround for me, obviously going to undergrad here, the acceptance for me was pretty seamless. I think it maybe took a week for them to get a decision back to me.
got
Uh,
it.
but a lot of it went into it was, my parents obviously want to retire. They don't want to pay another years of tuition for grad school. I do get, a pretty good scholarship for, going to undergrad and also being in the honors program here. But I would have to take that tuition on myself, and that was a big reason why I wanted to wait and just see if there's any opportunities that would come up. Because, do I want to defer a whole year's salary or pay a bunch of money to go back to school for a year? You know what I mean? So that was a big decision for me too.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, it was like you want to have that. You have that option. You have it in your back pocket, but it's kind of like the nuclear option. You don't want to really use it unless you've exhausted all of your other possibilities.
Right.
Essentially. Okay,
Exactly.
that makes sense. That's smart. So then you lined that up probably by like the end of May or early June. Then you held on to it until like probably mid to late July, which is the commit date. And then during that time, you're out there doing everything you can to try to line up a full-time opportunity. And then it sounds like it was just too last minute at the end of the day.
Yeah, it was definitely way too last minute at that point for me to even get on anywhere.
Yeah. So then you accepted the MSF admissions, and then you entered this master's program, and you basically just continue to do what you were doing, which is continue to network with people, continue to like see who is still hiring and whatnot, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. I just basically looked at it like I'm a senior again in undergrad, obviously doing a master's in finance. It's basically the way I looked at it is I went to, 5 years of school. The last year is just a little bit harder. So, I was still looking for analyst roles. I don't think that a master's in finance should exactly mean that I should be looking at associate roles by any means. So that's kind of the, that's a lot of the recommendations that I was getting from people that I was networking with just to make sure to see, where I would fit in the recruiting process and whatnot. So that was definitely a big part of it too.
Yeah, no, I think you're correct. Like, for those of you that, a lot of you, I mean, everybody's heard of MBAs, but most people, I think MSFs are more prevalent in Europe, but I think in America, it's a bit of a newer thing, right? And so I know that a lot of students aren't as familiar with master's in finance degrees, but yeah, typically the difference between MSFs and MBAs, and correct me if I'm wrong because you're actually going through it, but my understanding is that with MBAs, usually they want to, they only admit people that already have at least a couple years of work experience first. Whereas with the MSF, you don't have to like graduate from college, go work, get some experience, and come back. You can do that like immediately as almost like a fifth year, like you said. Like some people graduate college in 5 years, right? And you're just doing the same thing, but you're getting a master's degree on top of that. But then coming out of that, though, from a recruiting standpoint, you're correct that you people aren't going to hire you in as an associate. They're going to hire you in as an analyst, which is fine actually, because I actually think that's better to go into banking as an analyst and as an associate, because it's just a different experience, right? You learn more about modeling because that's like what you do day in and day out. That's a really valuable experience that you take away, and then also the exit opportunities are better, right? If you are, I'm not saying you are thinking about that, but like for a lot of people that they go into banking, if they're thinking about exit opportunities, like if you want to go to the buy side eventually or whatever, um, a lot of firms will only hire analysts and they won't hire associates, right? So I personally think that if given the choice, I would rather go in as an analyst as opposed to an associate. If I want to become an associate, I can always get promoted to an associate, right? Just do a good job and get promoted, and you end up back at the same place. So that's kind of how I think about it.
It's the exact same way I took it too. I think getting in as an analyst, especially from somebody like me who never had, summer analyst role in investment banking too. So I really wanted to get in as an analyst and learn as much as possible. I think it just would have been better for my career trajectory to go in as an analyst.
Right, right. No, that's a good point. I remember on our first the last client interview that we did, because for your junior summer, just for those people that didn't hear it last time, like what were you doing your junior summer?
Yeah, so I was working for the Royal Bank of Canada. They have their U.S. wealth management headquarters in Minneapolis, which is where I'm from. Did a lot of different things there. Specifically, it wasn't all, it was obviously in the wealth management office, but I was doing equity research, some fixed income sales and trading. There was one investment banker that I got to shadow. Not really what I was looking to do in terms of what I want to do in investment banking. So, but nonetheless, got to see a lot of different areas of finance.
Yeah, but you just didn't get like the typical like front office investment banking experience over the summer, and so that obviously was like something you had to overcome for full-time recruiting.
Yeah, definitely.
Got it. Okay, so then you overcame that. You got this PE job. It got rescinded. Then you pivoted to a master's in finance program, um, and then you continue. So then you joined the master's in finance in July. We're in February now. So then like walk us through what's been happening for like the last 7 months or so. Then, I mean, you don't have to give us all the details, but like if you just kind of like hit on the highlights, or like the main points, like what have you been up to?
A lot of LinkedIn, networking with people, trying to get on the phone with as many people as I can at a multitude of different banks at all sizes, whether they're small regional boutiques to bulge bracket banks, right? So I really got on the phone with just about everybody that I could, and really trying to network and see what kind of opportunities would be available. Obviously, it's in the early fall. They didn't really know what their hiring needs were going to be come summer 2021, but it's just keeping that constant contact and just seeing if there's any updates and whatnot. That took up a lot of time. And then also, searching on, job sites, just looking to see if there's any, investment banking analyst roles open for summer 2021. And if there were, applying, and then, just really prepping as well. So just in case an interview did come up, I was prepared for it and I wouldn't have to spend time trying to catch up and cram at the last second. So really trying to master the technicals and also the behaviorals as well. Two things that were really important, and just taking time each day to try and work on those.
Yeah. So what were some of the interviews you had in the end? Like, just because obviously, we wouldn't be sitting here talking if there wasn't a happy ending. But like, how many interviews were you able to get just by grinding through this entire slog of a networking process like you described?
Yeah, so I think I got a total of 5 interviews. I got a couple last semester, and then 3 this semester, and then one of them obviously was able to convert into a full-time offer. But if I go back in the early first semester when I was getting those first 2 interviews, and got through the super day at one of them, and felt like I did a really good job, and I thought that maybe I was going to convert this into a full-time offer. I felt super prepared. Didn't end up getting it, and again, like, I felt like I was dead in the water because I felt like it was so late in the process at this point. So I was like, I don't know what to do. Like I called my parents. I was like, hey, I might have to, start looking at other roles and not in investment banking. And, I took a day and just kind of reflected on it, thought to myself, and, I really pulled myself up on my bootstraps and said, this is something I really want to do. I'm not going to quit on this dream, this goal that I have to get into investment banking. And, thankfully it ended up working out for me. But, a lot of it goes towards, the networking that I did in the summer that really set me up to help me convert this last interview into a full-time job.
Yeah. And like, what were some of the, because so late in the process, like you said, you're basically a senior, right? Or you think of yourself as a senior. Um, Typically the standard full-time recruiting process, at least in a normal year, happens probably around August, right? Like the August before people go back to school for senior, because that's when the banks are giving out return offers to their summer interns, and then their summer interns will either accept or decline the offers. And if they decline the offers, most people accept, obviously, right? But if they decline the offers, then there might be like, one or two openings depending on the group, and then they'll try to fill that immediately, right? And then so obviously you didn't get your offer until February, right? I think it's February.
Right.
Yeah, you just got it recently. And so that's like halfway through senior year. So I guess what I'm curious about is like, how are you able to find these opportunities? And also like, what type of opportunities were you able to find so late in the process? Like what type of firms were you able to get interviews from? You said you have 5 interviews. Is it just like mostly small no-name banks that people have never heard of? Or if you were able to get like some better opportunities, like how did you discover or identify those opportunities?
Yeah, so I think research had a lot to do with it. At least from the 5 interviews that I had, I knew that one of the banks was a middle market bank, and they did not convert. Like I think they only converted like 40 or 50% of their summer interns into full-time roles. So I figured there were probably going to be full-time opportunities at some point. They're going to need analysts at some point, and then obviously having those conversations with people at that bank and just getting it from a junior analyst perspective, where they're getting crushed as junior analysts and they're going to need the higher analysts at some point. So just keeping that in the back of my mind is really knowing that there's going to be an application open at some point, and when it does, I'm going to jump all over it and continue networking with other people at that firm, more senior level people, to see if they can help me out and go to bat for me in the whole process. But in terms of the size of the banks that I was interviewing for, there were 2 middle markets and the rest were all boutiques. So, I mean, looking at smaller banks that, maybe they're growing, they might need a couple of analysts or 2 or 3 analysts. So a lot of research went into trying to find, those banks that are growing and looking to take on some more junior analysts.
Yeah, got it. And like ultimately, like where are you ending up? Like where are you gonna go?
Yeah, so I plan on starting. I actually just signed the papers today, so I will be starting at Jefferies this summer in June in their New York office. Starting out as a generalist, and from there, obviously, getting picked into a coverage group, which is a whole nother process of networking, which I'm still trying to do, and just see what groups that I want to end up in. But yeah, I'll be starting at Jefferies, and that was the offer I was able to convert.
That is awesome, man. I mean, out of those 5 banks, I'm guessing Jefferies was probably the best one out of the bunch, right?
It was.
So it's and I mean, to get a bank of Jefferies caliber so late in the process, like you had to. I mean, like you had to, like you said, like one, you were very strategic about it. In terms of like, I like how you brought the points about like knowing which firm gave, what percentage return offers that these firms give, right? Like, I think I know the bank that you're talking about, but like if a firm only gave 40-50% offers, they probably underhired, right? So they're probably going to have opportunities later on, in which case you want to make sure that you're networking with the people at that bank. So I think that's really smart. And I think even with Jefferies, I think you networked with, if I'm not mistaken, you networked with multiple people there and had really good conversations with them. But it wasn't like an immediate thing. It was like kind of drawn out process where they knew who you were and you were on their radar. And then when the time came and there was an opportunity, then either you reach back out to them or they reach back out to you, right? Is that how it kind of went down?
Yeah, so I think the first person I talked to at Jefferies wasn't even there anymore. He actually left to go to the buy side, but then connected with somebody else that was a VP at Jefferies, and he had a sort of a similar background as me. Like he didn't start in investment banking; he did the MBA route, and then came in as an associate, and then from there worked himself up to VP, and then had a really good conversation with him, and he seemed to really like me just because we had pretty similar backgrounds. I think he saw a lot of himself in me and formed a really good relationship with him, and I still do to this day. I could send him a text right now and he'd answer within the hour. Like that's the type of relationship that I got with him. And also reached out to a managing director in his same group that he works with, not even with a referral from him or anything. I just reached out to him and just see if I can get 10 minutes on his schedule. Ended up doing that. And again, a guy with another non-traditional path, like went to West Point, so served in the Army for a while, was a decorated veteran in the Middle East, and then came back and wanted to get into investment banking and ended up doing that after doing an MBA. So two guys that had pretty similar backgrounds to me, obviously a very non-traditional kind of backdoor way into investment banking. And, they, both of them really liked me. They seem to, really like me a lot. They think, I'd run through walls for them. I'm a hard worker and, somebody that they can rely on. So I feel like I formed a really good relationship with them. And then from there, just trying to talk to some more junior people, and obviously being a part of the Wolf Pack really helped me out with that. A really good friend of mine that's also a client of Sam's, got me in touch with an analyst that's at Jefferies, and he's from Minnesota too, and just like me, so we kind of had that connection going as well. So great to kind of network with a bunch of people and get a lot of different perspectives in terms of answering the why Jefferies in the interview. I had so many perspectives, so many inside perspectives, that it was a really easy interview for me.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned a lot of good points here, which is like a lot of times when people are networking, they just kind of they don't have like a targeted approach. Like they just take this spray and pray. Let me go on LinkedIn and spam everyone, and like yes, of course, like we're probably all going to do that to some degree, right? But usually, more often than not, the people that are really actually going to move the needle for you, or the people that are really going to go out of their way to help you, are the people that you're able to build that really strong rapport with. And usually the people you're really going to be able to build really strong rapport with are people that you have a lot of similarities with, right? The thing is, like when we say similarities, most people they're so limited in their thinking. They're just like, oh, who went to the same school as me? Like how do I reach out to alumni or whatever? But like for you, if you go to a non-target school, it's probably not going to be a whole lot there, right? And so you have to kind of like think outside the box a little bit. It's like what school you go to is just one type of similarity. In fact, it's probably a pretty superficial one. There are other types of similarities in this case that you found with the VP, that you found with the MD. And because, like you said, they probably saw a little bit of yourself in them. Those are usually the people that, people are inclined to help. It's like, hey, he reminds me of myself back when I was trying to make it in the industry, and somebody else probably helped me, and now I'm going to pay it forward to this guy, right? And so I think that's really, really smart, man. Now, obviously, so you had support from these people. You were able to get the interview with Jefferies when the opportunity arose. And then, like, what was that interview process like? Like, is the full-time interview process, did you find it to be tougher than the summer interview process, or like, and then, like, in terms of the preparation, like, how was that for you? Like going into it?
Yeah, I think it was very similar to what you would get out of like a summer analyst type of interview, maybe a little bit more technical at points. Obviously, I don't have, a typical investment banking background by any means. So maybe they'll test me a little bit more on the technicals just to make sure that I can check that box and that I know what I'm talking about and that I'm capable of doing the job. But I think my story was something that really mattered a lot. And I think that really resonated with people in interviews. And once I told my story, they actually they realized that I really do want to do this. It's something I want to do, and I'm committed to it. So I think that certainly helps. But in terms of the process with Jefferies, I had my first round interview, I think not this past Friday, but the Friday before. So, a little over a week ago, a week and a half ago, probably. And then I had a super day with another bank on Friday. And, I made sure to let them know that I had another, super day coming up. So I might have competing offers or competing deadlines if I were to end up getting an offer from the other bank as well. So they kind of put me through the process a little bit earlier than everybody else. So I was able to do my first round first. I was able to do my super day first. Jefferies is going to have another round of super days coming up in the next couple of weeks as well. But I think
I have a couple of clients going through that. Yeah. Sorry. And so you went early, and then.
Yeah, so I went early. I interviewed with an analyst first round. It was mostly technical, but nothing too crazy. It was basically the standard stuff. Felt really good about it and thought I had a really good connection with him. And, he was really impressed by me, which was always good. So then, moved on to the super day, and the interviews it was an hour long super day, 3 interviews, 20 minutes each with 2 people interviewing me. So it was either 2 MDs or an MD and a VP. And then you'd get a multitude of different questions. They would stop you in the middle of your story and ask about technical stuff, or then make you pick up where you left off and whatnot. And something that I was pretty prepared for. I felt like I did a really good job afterwards, and end up getting the offer the same day that I did the super day. And they told me at the end of it, I talked to HR just to see like what the timeline was. I didn't get the opportunity to ask anybody that interviewed me, and they said that I'd find out in the next couple of weeks, and then I'd get done with practice, and I'm doing some maintenance and rehab stuff on the body and whatnot, and I get a call from this random number, and I pick it up, and it's one of the people that interviewed me and just offering me the position. They all came to consensus that I did a really amazing job during the super day, and they just wanted to offer me right away. So felt really, really honored, really blessed, and also a little bit lucky too.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, like, people always ask, like, how long does it take for me to hear back after an interview? And what I usually tell them is, depends. How did you perform? Because in my experience, like back when I was in banking, we interviewed a bunch of students, or not even, doesn't matter. Like anytime we interview students, we will debrief that same day. Like, if not the very next day, but usually the same day, while it's still like fresh in everybody's mind, right? And so if you're like a hell yes for them, which in this case it sounds like you were, then they can move very quickly, right? Especially when they know you have a competing deadline. They don't want to lose you to the other bank, right? If you are a hell no, then they can also get back to you very quickly because you just did so poorly. Or in that case, you will know. They don't even need to get back to you. You will know you probably didn't get the job.
Right.
And then if you're kind of like in the middle, like you're kind of like if you just did okay, they probably would have waited. And that's why they originally told you you'll hear back in a few weeks, because they want to wait until they finish interviewing the next batch of candidates in case somebody there might be better than you, right? And so it's great that you knocked it out of the park, because if you didn't, then you probably would have gotten this other. You might have gotten this other competing offer, which probably would have been exploding, which probably you would not have wanted to take it over Jefferies, but you might have had to take it over Jefferies because Jefferies won't get back to you for a few weeks, right? So like sometimes it's not even just about like passing the interview, but it's like, to what degree can you knock the interview out of the park, right? Both on the behavioral side and the technical side. Like you talked about on the behavioral side, your story really resonating with them. And actually, I'd be curious to hear like what you think it was that resonated so well, or what do you think worked well for your story? Like, you don't have to tell us like exactly what you used for your story, but like what was it about your story that just worked well for you? That's one question that I have. And then the other question I have is like, it sounds like they got pretty technical in the interview. I heard from my other client who also got an offer from Jefferies. I think it's probably your friend from Minnesota, actually. I won't say his name. He was telling me that they had one of the more technical super days because he interviewed at multiple banks too. But was that the case for you too? Like, because it sounded like they would interrupt you, ask you technical questions, kind of like drill down into it and then like come back out, ask you something else. Like it wasn't, they were really like trying to keep you on your toes a little bit, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It was like one of the things that I did my senior year of undergrad was I had competed in the CFA Institute Research Challenge, and it had the company that we did sell-side initiating coverage on, Graham Corporations up here in Batavia, New York. Um, Literally, I was telling the story about how I was going through my senior year and sort of my process, and then he stopped me in the middle of it all and just said, why is Graham Corporation trading at 17x right now? And I had to quickly come up with something on the spot. It was like that. So I had a really good answer for it. Thankfully, I knew a lot because I did most of the modeling and the valuation for what we did in the CFA Institute Research Challenge. So I felt pretty prepared for it, and I thought I gave a really good answer. And the interviewer ended up agreeing with me. But to answer your question, what works for me in my story, talking about my youth, sort of how I grew up was always how I start my story, right? Coming from this, place just outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota, like no name city that probably no one else has ever heard of unless you're from Minnesota. So, obviously came from pretty modest and humble beginnings, and, really developed a work ethic really early in my life. I think that's something that my parents really taught my older brother and I really well. So, sort of use that as a common theme throughout. And, getting recruited to play calls across, coming from an area that's not a hotbed, right? Like the best recruits are going to come from Long Island, they're going to come from Baltimore, the Philadelphia area. So I was overlooked by a lot of schools in the recruiting process for calls across, and that put a huge chip on my shoulder. I worked really hard. I would consider myself a late bloomer in terms of growth and development in high school, and I was able to get on RIT's radar really late in my senior year. It was winter in my senior year. By the time all my friends that I play with were already committed, I wasn't still. I had no idea where I was going to go. RIT is a Division III perennial powerhouse. Like this team is a top 5 team in the country every single year. Played in national championships, and hopefully we get to win one this year, and we haven't yet. But very good program that's very well coached, and I felt like the recruiting process to get to RIT and to get to such a good place, I feel like that's very similar to what I went through in investment banking, right? Like non-traditional background, doesn't have the pedigree, had to work really hard just to even get interviews and get in front of, it's like similar to get in front of coaching staff, right? So I feel like the processes were very similar. I think that sort of helps sort of streamline my story in terms of a common theme throughout is that I'm somebody that's going to work really hard, that's really resilient, and somebody that's not going to take no for an answer and just continue to work until, I reach the goal that I want to get to. I think that really helped me out. That's something that stuck out for me.
I'm smiling as I'm listening to you tell your story because, uh, one, it's just such a good story. I think you do such a good job of like talking about who you are on a personal level, right? Not necessarily even talking about like, oh, I've done this internship and this internship and this internship, because like, it's not, if that's just not that might not be the best approach for you, right? It's not like, oh, I interned at this investment bank junior or something. Like you didn't do that, right? But regardless, you have a lot of really, really good qualities and traits. Um, like genuinely, like you have a lot of really good qualities and traits that they look for in banking, and it is you understanding what it is that bankers want to see, and then you highlighting those qualities, and you really just staying true to yourself. But like you said, being able to weave that common thread throughout your story, I think that's something that a lot of people don't do very well, right? And so, anyway, I'm just smiling because one, I was thinking like, damn, I'm so proud of you, but also too, like, it's been a while since I've heard your answer because I know we worked on it like a long time ago, and but like we work with a lot of students, and so I don't remember what everyone is saying. But now hearing it, I'm like, oh yeah, it's a really good answer. So that's amazing, and I think that's really insightful for people who are listening too. Is like, how do you come up with a story that's true to you, but also like when the interviewer hears it, like when I listen to Alex tell that story, I'm thinking like, oh yeah, this is a really um, genuine story, and I feel like I'm actually getting to know him as a person, even though I just met him. not that I just met you, but like if I were the interview, even though I just met him, versus a lot of people when they have their stories, it's like very rehearsed and very like, oh, this guy's just telling me like kind of what he thinks I want to hear, but it's not really how he actually is. Right? Like bankers, they can interviewers, they can kind of see past that, right? And it's just like if you're not being genuine, it's probably not going to work very well. So that's really, really well done. On the technical side, obviously, you brought up a great point, which is you have something on your resume that you supposedly, not you supposedly, that you said you've done, right? And then bankers are gonna really like test you to see if you actually did what you said, right? Because we all know a lot of people put stuff on their resume and they kind of exaggerate it a little bit, but they say they did a certain thing, but actually maybe their teammate did it, or maybe they didn't like do it at all, and they're just like trying to make their resume look good. You don't want to do that because if you couldn't answer that question about like why this company is trading at 17x or whatever, uh, then you're dead on arrival, right? Like that's probably it right there, because now you have no credibility in anything you say, even though you say you did this modeling and whatever, you couldn't explain it. Like that's the worst thing that could happen, right? And so I think that's really, really important as well. And then I know you were telling me in private, I think in Slack, you were saying like going into the interview or your first round interview, which was I think was a technical interview, you didn't really have to prep that much for it, right? Or maybe you didn't prep at all, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I didn't really prep that much for it. Obviously, I did a lot of prep work leading up to it. So I won't say that like I tried to cram specifically for this one interview and I was prepping just for this interview. Like I think the help was I had so many repetitions doing this before that it just came natural to me. And I was really starting to understand and put the pieces together. And by the time I was done with the technical portion of the interview, I felt like I aced it and I felt like I did a really good job. Like I didn't have to think about it at all. Like it was just me answering questions like we're having a conversation almost.
Yeah. Yeah, no, sorry, I don't want to mischaracterize it. Obviously, you had to put in a ton of work to get to where you are. What I meant was, you had already gotten to the level in terms of your technical understanding where it's no longer about like, oh my God, I have an interview coming up. Let me do a bunch of last minute cramming as if like it's a final exam that's coming up or something. It's like you've already internalized the stuff, right? It's like it's already in your head, like this knowledge that you possess, and you don't need to do like last minute cramming. It's like you already know it, you understand the concepts. It's just having a conversation with someone about something that you're already very well versed in, right? Like if you had to talk to someone about lacrosse today, you probably don't need to prep for that, right? Because you know the sport inside out. It's like, that's kind of the level you have to get to on the technical side, and like you do not get to that level by if you had the wrong approach to learning this stuff. Like if what you're doing is what most people are doing, which is let me memorize the exact answers to this exact list of questions or whatever, like it's just not going to cut it, right? Then like when the interview asks you like, well, why is this company trading at 17 times? That's not in any interview guide, right? That's just a question that they made up on the spot, right? You can either apply the technical knowledge that you already have in terms of how companies are valued. You can either apply that to the situation or you can't, right? In this case, you were able to do that, which probably made you look really, really good.
Yeah, and to address that question again, like I didn't even know what Graham Corporation was trading at that day. Like he just like during my interview and I was telling my story, he just quickly Googled it and said, why are they trading 17x? And thankfully I knew the business model enough to be able to answer that question really, really well and give him a spot on answer in terms of, from an outsider's perspective, they wouldn't have understood it unless I explained it, right? So it was something that you would have to really like meet with the management team of Graham Corporation, and we were able to do that in the research challenge, but which was really awesome too. But was able to come up with something that was really good on the spot. So I kind of had to think of my feet there for a second.
Yeah, I think the two takeaways from this specific thing that you're talking about that I want people to take away is just like one, this is a perfect example of what I always try to tell everyone, which is they're not just going to ask you questions from the interview guides. They're not, right? So if that's all you're doing, you wouldn't pass these interviews, right? And the second thing is like whatever you say you've done on your resume, like make sure you know it inside out, right? Inside out is like, okay, so you pitch the stock, you better know this company inside out. You better be able to tell me why this company is worth what it's worth, right? And if you can't do that, then you're probably not going to pass the interview, right? So, but that's, man, this is a lot of good stuff. I think people are going to be able to take away a bunch of insights on both on the networking side, what you did there, the behavioral side, how you told your story, on a technical side, the type of questions you have to be prepared for. So it's an amazing interview. I want to thank you for just, sharing this with everyone. For those of you that are listening, if you guys want help with this stuff, feel free to reach out to our team, right? Typically the first step is to just book a call with us. You can do that by going to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street's abbreviated to ST, so it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. And what we'll do is, like, we can't work with everyone, so we'll actually jump on a call with you. We'll figure out like what your situation is. Like, everyone's situation is different, right? Like, Alex's situation was very unique, right? Like, like he said, he didn't have the traditional background. We had to talk to you first, get to know where your situation is, understand like what your goals are, how much time do we have left, what are the challenges that you need help with, and then based on that, like, we'll be able to tell you if we think we can help you or not. And sometimes we might not be able to, in which case we'll tell you that. But if we can't help you, then the next step would be for us to go and customize a game plan for you and figure out like, okay, here's what we think needs to happen for you to be successful. And if that sounds like something that's logical and makes sense to you and you want to work with us together, then we can talk about next steps, right? But at a minimum, if not, then you get some advice from us and you can go do what you want with that. So either way, I think it's a win-win. So if you guys want to book that call, go to the website that I just gave you guys, and we look forward to speaking to you guys. So Alex, I want to thank you for coming on here and sharing your story with us for a second time. I think you're the first person in Wall Street Mastermind history to do this twice, and for better or for worse. I mean, I think, look, when things first happened, I'm sure it was like a total gut punch, right? It's like, oh my God, I lost my offer to COVID, and then even after that, getting to the super day, getting so close, feeling like you did well, not getting an offer. There's just so many gut-wrenching moments along the way. But you being so resilient and you just persevering and continuing to stick with it and not giving up halfway through, even though you thought about it for maybe half a second, but then you kept going, and then, like, in the end, coming out the other side with an offer from Jefferies, which is, I would argue, an even better outcome than the one that you got a year ago. I think that's an amazing story. It's an amazing accomplishment, and you absolutely deserve it. I'm super excited for you, man. Super excited to see what you're able to accomplish going forward. So, I'll be on the sidelines cheering you on, man.
Yeah, absolutely. It was obviously quite a journey, quite a wild ride, I will say myself. And obviously being on the goal line just so many times and getting so close, but finally breaking through, it feels really good.
Yeah, and it all worked out in the end, so it's all worth it. That's amazing. So anyway, thank you again for coming on, man. And guys, that'll be it for this episode. All right. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this and learned a lot. And we'll be back again with more of these in the near future. All right. Talk soon. Bye.